Excelente. Excelente. Yeah, and if
Yeah,
anything comes up,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
Fratella.
Adrián, no. So nice to be with you.
Yeah, it's so nice.
Um,
Yeah.
well, so I had some things that I wanted to share. Unless you have anything you wanted to check in about first, but I had you know, I've been to this retreat that you suggested, that you recommended,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been meditating every day since, and they've been quite deep and vivid. And this morning I had a meditation where I encountered this beautiful horse. So I had this kind of like spontaneous image
Mm.
that came to me, and so I started writing about it after the meditation, and kind of trying to describe the qualities that I felt that were present. And I felt this like nobility and the strength of the horse, and I felt somehow like held,
Mm.
like almost protected by this horse, by this being. And I could, I could caress it, and I was just noticing its beauty and its coat. But then I was just reflecting on the nature of like what it's like to presence and experience animals. and and the first thing that came to me was just that there's this inherent trustworthiness, that
Mm.
there's this realness, like that their inner experience is being automatically expressed with no hesitation in the way that they are,
Mm.
in the way. And so that my perception of them is reflecting the experience that they're having to some degree. Like there's this transparency there.
Yeah.
and it felt like it was somehow comforting,
Mm-hmm.
and it gave me a sense of like confidence or trust, right?
Mm.
Like there's nothing being concealed, in the way that like self-reflective consciousness can
Mm-hmm.
uh conceal experience.
Mm-hmm.
um so I was writing about that, and then what came to me was that I had this other experience that I wanted to share. Well, actually, I don't know. Do you have anything? Do you want to kind of respond to that about
Yeah.
the trustworthiness, the inherent
Yeah.
kind of realness, and not to say the trustworthiness of like, oh, this animal's like my friend and going to
No, no,
do
no,
what I
no,
wanted
no.
to do or not hurt me, or you know what I mean? It's not like,
Yeah, no, 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 no.
but just the like trustworthiness of you're experiencing
Yeah, it's that
something that
depth,
reflects and
realness.
corresponds
Mm-hmm.
transparently. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's
Yeah.
something comforting about um that realness and that presence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, hermano. Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful story to me because you are elucidating one of the main callings that I have felt that is why we are doing this stream.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because we have realized in our relationship and in our lives
Yeah.
that bringing transparency, being transparent beings with ourselves as well as with each other,
Mm.
is one of the most beautiful things that we have ever experienced. And
Mm.
that's where the joy has been there, and the learning, and then also the realness that is like, oh my goodness, well,
Totally.
we're also brothers. and
Yeah.
we're brothers that like we grew up together and all of this, and then it's like, oh well, we then see all of the problems, you know, the quote problems that are
Mm-hmm.
out in the world,
Mm-hmm.
the lack of capacity to communicate and to
Yeah.
be able to be with each other, and then we're like, well, seems like this capacity to be able to be transparent with each other maybe is something that could be
Mm-hmm.
helpful, just a
Yeah.
little bit maybe. And so then I'm just hearing this story and remembering the experience of being with a horse, being with animals, and there's something then beautiful that you are pointing at, because it's, in a way, this actually connects to there's a this Sanskrit word that we've talked about before called sahaja, that
Mm.
is the
Mm-hmm.
naturalness of the arising, that is from it's like the simultaneous alchemy that is always arising in the present moment from all that is the oneness and the uniqueness of the
Mm-hmm.
dual. The dual and the
Mm-hmm.
non-dual are both. And when I see that horse,
Mm-hmm.
or I see that image and that feel that, that's what it is that I start to connect to. I'm like, oh, there's no doubt in my being that
Mm-hmm.
the way that that horse is looking at me
Mm-hmm.
is whole in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Is not
Yeah.
like hiding something from me or something. It's
Yes.
just being, it's just, there's no,
Exactly.
exactly. And so then that's like, I love that you're sharing this, because then I'm like, well, is that not then an anchor that can,
Yes.
and maybe this is also why so many of us love to have pets, you know?
Mm. Sure.
And, and so it's so beautiful that you're, you know, just bringing this. It feels like a wonderful like overture to one
Mm-hmm.
of the pieces that we bow to together, and that
Mm-hmm.
we, you know, the depth that we feel.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something comforting about that, and so necessary. I guess it's sometimes hard to, or maybe it's just, yeah, it's difficult to realize how much I've been habituated to living without that assumption that there's nothing behind the veil of what I'm experiencing. that that what I'm seeing is simply what is real. And I guess it could be seen as a particularly like mental faculty of trying to look at different angles at the same time, and doing so with sufficient um, maybe efficiency or depth, so as to get to the real behind the veil of the present. And and I think that that can be and is exhausting. So there's something comforting and alleviating, and almost like calling and returning home in a way, like a place where there's no pretense in a way. And it's true that our relationship in a way has been that, as a sanctuary, as a refuge,
Mm.
over the past few years, and throughout our life. And it kind of, so, and this is kind of a segue into what I wanted to mention, um, that I then wrote about afterward, because after the meditation, not this morning, but after a meditation that I had a couple weeks ago, I went outside the hall and I looked at the sea. And there's this beautiful platform where you could look at the Pacific Ocean. and and there's something about this like hypersensitivity that is afforded after long sessions of meditation. um and and so I was looking at the sea, but I had the experience that it was just implicit, that I was seeing it for the first time, that I was seeing this ocean,
Yeah.
and it just felt like inconceivable and so wildly beautiful, like, and I didn't exactly know why is it so why is this so beautiful. and and also I started imagining like what's behind the surface of this body of water. There's this entire world, this entire dimension of life. And it was kind of a strange, almost just like outside, like ecstatic in the sense of being outside of my typical paradigm. So I was feeling just the depth and the call, and somehow the gift that it is to be able to perceive things and these elements in our existence. But so the experience though of seeing something new and of being surprised, like allowing ourselves to be surprised by it, feels like something that you and I have touched on a lot. Um, and it's maybe connected to this sense of like, oh, existential humility, like, oh, I'm willing to look at the world in a way that it might surprise me, to look at it in a new way. And and so I'm just looking at the writing that I did about it.
Mm.
But I wanted to ask this question
Mhm.
about us, because
Mhm.
in our relationship, I think that we have cultivated that kind of willingness to step outside of the familiar and the habitual, and maybe the pre-existent interpretation of what relationship is. So it feels like we're continuing to do that. And in a way, I guess this offering of like, oh, we're going to share some of who we are is an opportunity to continue that. Um, but I wanted to bring that because it feels like when we do that, we are allowing for the present to be the most alive it can be. And and that seems to lift the sacredness, this dimension there that happens when we slow down and when we just feel the preciousness. and and I think that that's part of what has been so um rewarding about being able to connect with you. And I also just wanted to, all briefly before I hand it over, think about that in terms of that freshness and seeing things again, thinking about family in the context of family and family relationships, things that can be interpreted as the most habitual, the most like the interpretation that has been gone over the most sometimes in our consciousness. And yet there's so much content there, like so many things for us to look at freshly, broadly, as like, oh, and just humans, right? So yeah, that's something else that I was feeling, and it just wanted to share and to
Mm.
invite to feel.
Yeah, how beautiful. Yeah, I can feel the attunedness of your. It's almost like, that you're sharing this now, and that you're sharing this now, that there's an alignment between with what you're sharing and the pieces that you're naming and um, our purpose,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you could be sharing about other things. There's
Yeah.
many of other things that we will be talking about and sharing about, but you're talking about this.
Mm.
And and it's seemingly to me at the heart of what it is that really has sparked this aliveness, this sense of, oh yes, oh yes, like this,
Yes.
yes, I, yes, that echoes through life now as it is. Like the life that it's like, oh yes, when I am like this with you, when we are like this, I love the way that we hold life through our perception.
Mm.
Like I love it more when
Yes.
we're being with this humility. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that includes both moments in which we are healthy and
Mm.
resourced, like maybe like right now,
Mm-hmm.
as
Mm-hmm.
well as moments in which we are going through difficulty, illness, injury, or
Mm.
hurt, you know, that it's this
Yeah.
same element of this humility that we birth. That's what we've practiced with this vulnerability with each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I tell you when my heart is hurting,
Yeah.
whatever that is. And so there's that element that seems very powerful to me. And then the second part that you named that seems very powerful to me is family. And there's something there that for me, part of the double kind of there's like a double wave
Mm-hmm.
of power
Mm.
and significance and meaning, that is here partially because of family, because of being family.
Mm.
That, and not necessarily, I mean, all with all the, I was going to say not necessarily just because we're biological family, but it is actually biological family is one particular
Mm-hmm.
root of intimacy, of realness that is there, of dimensionality that is here now. Our own, the history. It's like the archaeology of our biology that is pulsating every moment
Yeah.
is possible to be included and acknowledged more deeply with each other,
Mm.
right? Like with all so many things that we've talked about, but just like that, what I mean for many many people, the experience of it's actually even though my family is a resource in the sense that that's where I come from, to whatever
Mm-hmm.
degree, it's also very difficult in holidays to go and be with them,
Yeah.
and or in whatever birthdays or gatherings, and what is hard about that, right? And it's all of our collective trauma, our ancestral trauma, and in our familial, shapes of that are not just trauma, but it's like the evolutionary capabilities and the shapes that we are, that
Mm.
are little by little growing and evolving. But specifically with you as
Mm-hmm.
my brother,
Mm-hmm.
you and I connecting, we touch each other's landscapes of archaeology much deeper and more immediately
Yeah.
than somebody else, through just like looking at each other
Mm.
and hearing each other's voices. It's kind of like smelling the perfume of my mother, like
Mm-hmm.
suddenly it's like I smell the perfume that she used, and suddenly it's
Mm-hmm.
like a whole life, of like
Yeah.
pinging.
Yeah.
And so there's something there the that's the double-edged. More data is flowing when we're with family, and if there's enough resource, like that when we have enough resource in this, it's has an incredible gift potential,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because of that depth. And that's
Mm.
part of what I have felt as
Yeah.
my aliveness, why I'm like, my relationship with my brother
Mm.
feels like a gift to me, feels like a gift to him,
Mm.
and like a gift to potentially others
Mm-hmm.
in that way,
Yeah.
in that excitement. And so this piece of family there also feels super just alive,
Mm.
alive. And
That's
and
beautiful.
gratitude, that I feel like a sense of gratitude, that because without each other, and that's part of what I feel when a family member dies,
Mm-hmm.
that suddenly this echoing capacity, there's an echoing capacity that's lost,
Yeah.
and there's something that we're doing here by being together and
Yeah.
doing this together. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. I feel also drawn just to what you brought up about about the ability for presencing to help in moments where we feel difficulty or where we encounter conflict in our awareness or in our psychological makeup, in our spiritual makeup. um and yeah, the resource of the presence. um so it reminds me a little bit of what also that I shared the other day, which is just to that I felt this determination, or maybe it was just like this phrase that felt alive, which is to never sacrifice presence for any alternative. And and that felt,
Makes me laugh, yeah.
yeah, it feels yeah, it feels alive, um for both in all of the spectrum, right, of experience. um because it's funny, I think some people, and this is kind of, it's not really tangential, I think it's related, but it feels like with the rush of self documentation, like of being able to document so much of our lives and to share it, it feels like we have preemptively started to live out some future in the present because we're documenting it, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna I'm gonna think about how I'm gonna share about this because it might be a way for some future reward in some strange way or something. um and I guess that's also a way in which which we kind of like are willing to sacrifice presence. um and of course then the other spectrum, and that's in a like quote positive way of like, oh, there's something that excites me, so let me go to a possible
Yeah,
future and leave
yeah.
the present. But obviously there's, you know, the other spectrum, the other side of the spectrum, which would be like, I'm gonna sacrifice the present to go somewhere that I don't feel great, but just because that's maybe the way that I've learned or you know, turned established a pattern in my own behavior and my own thinking. um but yeah, so you naming that kind of felt resonance felt resonant, and it feels important also because I think taking our this mutual medicine that is our family relationship and our brotherhood, as a foundation, it feels necessary and like a calling to not only share the kind of the beauty of the love that we have, that we feel for one another, which I think is a special thing, but also to kind of to look into the nooks and crannies and to look into the cracks, into the shadows, and to in each other, in ourselves, in a kind of like exercise of real vulnerability, which I think has a particular intensity in the context of family, because sometimes family is, this is the context that I would rather not be seen in my most vulnerable, right? I mean, I'm talking, you know, generally, socially. um but also simply because I think it feels like a cathartic and the cleansing kind of way of bringing these things into our in talking, and also opening up a conversation, because part of what we want to do is share with others. That's, you know, one of the purposes for this is like, oh, let's come together and presence and practice presence, um but in a but what's standing between us and really being willing to be present here together. And a lot of times it's things that I don't want to feel, things that I don't want to look at, things that I do. And there's millions of things. Before we started, you were also talking about just how we're reacting to the world constantly by being bombarded and exposed to different things that are happening in the world. And I feel those things are contributing and to our own inner conversation, how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about existing. And it interacts with like the pre-existing shadow and stuff that we carry. So anyway, it feels, yeah, it feels alive to just look at that side. So I'm grateful that you brought that up, and I'm curious about what, yeah, how you feel about what I was just saying.
Yeah. I'm feeling a reverence for existence, just in listening to what you're saying. There's yeah, yeah, reverence. Um, this reverence you named how hmm, how we in the documenting of our lives
Mm-hmm.
we are it's like we're shelving
Yeah.
parts of life
Mm-hmm.
and so when we shelve something that we say, okay, well, I'm going to document this because what am I trying to do? I'm going to like write it down. As I'm
Mm-hmm.
writing it down, I am having a kind of a relationship with that particular memory or that particular experience, which is
Yeah.
like a conversation or a piece of creativity, an experience of creativity or something like that, or something precious, and as I'm writing about it, I'm in a way I'm like chewing on it, like as I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
then
Mm-hmm.
there's a way where writing or doing some documenting can be like a chewing,
Yes.
metabolizing, and that
Yes.
part is like bringing more of that experience in the present moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, totally, totally. Yeah.
Then there's the kind of documenting that we've been talking about, that is the shelving.
Yeah.
Like I'm just putting something down, or I'm making sure that this is, like organized in this way. And so I'm putting it up on my shelves. And when I'm doing that, part of what it is that I was hearing from you, or seeing as you were talking, is that there are moments in which we essentially don't know how to love
Mm.
the life that is happening. And the
Mm.
moment that we don't know, and by love simply meaning that humility, that curiosity, that realness of that horse, like that sense of just being completely transparent in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it may be, with tiredness, whatever it may be, that sahajaness, that we have limits basically in all the places where we have our attachments and our limits of our own biology and our, whatever the limits that we have. And so what we're essentially doing is we're taking part of life, let's like you life, that I essentially don't know how to be close with or include at that level. I'm going to put you over here and shelve you and deal with you later. And so I'm creating some space in a
Yeah.
way.
Deal with you
Yeah.
later.
Yeah. And I'll deal with you later. And so, but what's essentially happening is that there's a metaphor that Thomas Hubel uses, a teacher of ours, I guess. That it's like where both two things. I mean, where are we? Like, where is this shelf?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good
Like
question.
where is it? And then the other part is that it has like a freezer quality to it. It's like I'm going to put it in the freezer so that it lasts a long time and I can remember it
Mm.
later. And
Right, like
if it's
conserving.
like preserving quality, and that particular preserving quality has a kind of distancing, maybe numbing or separating, with what it is that I'm stashing. So that if I were sensing all of it all the time, it would probably be overwhelming, right? That would mean
Mm-hmm.
that I wouldn't be documenting. I would realize that everything is happening all at once.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I'm numbing myself in a
Mm-hmm.
certain way and shelving all this
Yeah.
stuff. And then what's happening is that there's a living, breathing process that is happening, that as I'm sitting here with you, my brother,
Yeah.
yeah, I am giving energy to my freezer.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. And and so when you spoke and I said I'm feeling a reverence,
Mm-hmm.
we're starting to name a process that is happening all the time. It's like a meta awareness of this document. This awareness of documenting is an awareness that we've got like more arms than we think we do, and we're certainly stashing stuff and
Yeah.
documenting and putting things away and holding this thing over there and then this one down here while also talking to you,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And but our awareness is little by little essentially including all of this by including it, but because you
Mm-hmm.
were literally talking
Mm-hmm.
about it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Rather
Mm-hmm.
than, so you're bringing that unconscious process as a conscious process here for us.
Yes. Yes.
And that to me is that ground of being,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
where I feel
Mm-hmm.
that reverence of, oh, if I can essentially realize that it's a freezer, it's not actually a thing that I can deal with tomorrow. Like tomorrow doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow is happening right now,
Yeah.
you know. And we're here. And so then now with more transparency of what's actually here, what do we want to talk about?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like
Yeah. Yeah.
this feeling.
Yeah.
And that's part of what,
So good.
yeah,
I
yeah,
love that analogy of the freeze. I mean,
yeah.
yeah, freezer, and also just recognizing that we take things from our moment and we stash them, and that's kind of like a maybe an innate mechanism. I'm trying to think because what another thing that it brings up for me is that I guess I feel it's important at some point to start just as a human and like thinking about yourself and thinking about our past and relationships and wounds and things that we carry, etc., to kind of dispel with the idea that that we're that we're that we are only one thing. Like that that there's this like unitary or unitive property or quality to our being, as opposed to like a multifaceted thing that organically something exists on one side and then the other, and that our psyche and our soul actually demonstrates this in many ways. And so I'm feeling that as you're describing what happens when we put things away and stash things, etc., and thinking about who it is that's doing the stashing also, or like, or who it is that's like being created as we're stashing, because maybe there's like oh, I'm like feeding this other side of my personality as I'm choosing to put this particular experience in the freezer, and like and and so yeah, I'm kind of fascinated by that, and it kind of reminds me a little bit about a recent conversation that I was listening to about IFS, about because of this whole
Parts work.
thing, parts work, or not only IFS, but yeah, parts work more broadly, um, and yeah, so that feels so good to do in the context of family as well, because I feel like in family and in relationships, sometimes our different personalities and the different aspects of our being get featured so differently. I'm so different with my dad than I am with my brother, or so different with my mom, or whatever, what have you. But it feels like kind of that core constellation where the different aspects of our being get formulated or established in a way. And then but also I was just going to add that maybe, you know, I might initially interpret the idea of stashing as like, oh well, all like I should avoid stashing, but maybe I was reconsidering and thinking maybe stashing, not stashing, but like the fact that we're kind of fragmentary is a normal part of just being, and that if my present is, and if I'm more centered, if I'm more present, and if I'm being able to hold this center, then what I keep, like the things that I cultivate for other parts of my experience, whether spatially or temporally, is like it can be a loving thing. Like, you know, maybe that's like a loving, beautiful memory that I have, like, you know, the memories, well, memories of beautiful things that I've lived in my life that kind of, that are a part of me. Um, or that there's this other faculty that I have that I don't always utilize, like right now I'm talking, but in other moments I'm singing, or in other moments I'm just touching. And so anyway, I was just thinking that maybe there's this like light side to that, um putting, you know, of just having this like multiplicity of our being, and it's just like multi-armed and maybe like multiple roots, and as opposed to
Yeah.
feeling fractured, it's just like the fractal energy of being, oh, more
Hmm.
than one thing. So yeah,
Yeah.
that
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. My sense is that you're you're showing how yeah, there's like a unitive force that allows duality to be.
wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, no, that's what I'm sensing that you're highlighting with do this, because you're showing how the same thing that can be seen as, oh, I'm in the process of separating, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
is also this multiplicity. When I see it from this perspective of the multiplicity of my being,
Yeah.
that I am everything. I am the stuff that's being frozen, and I'm the stuff that's whatever, just being temporarily shelved, and like all these
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Then suddenly there's a sense of the connection and the evolutionary reality. That's also more how biology is
Right.
happening all the time,
Right.
right? That
Yeah.
we're not
Yeah.
separate. We're not
Yeah.
like, we could not be without the air that we're breathing
Yes.
right now.
Right.
You know, like all
Right.
the time. And we
Yeah.
call it air, but who am I to say that I am not the air?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Exactly. What's the boundary between,
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah. And so, but there's something there of, um, well, part of what's also implicit here that you're with what you're pointing at is that, like, if you can feel that your awareness did like an awareness gymnastics move, you know, like,
Mm-hmm.
phew, wah, phew, you know, like a thing going from the place where I left the metaphor of this, you know, the separation or the sense of keeping things in the
Mm-hmm.
freezer or whatever,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to where you brought it, where the same thing
Mm. Right.
has this kind of like unitive force.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so there's an alchemy that is maybe essential to awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Like that awareness has the capacity to birth difference and separate, you know, like,
Yes.
and then include into like a
Yes.
whole.
Yeah, that's it feels resonant, it feels profound. Yeah. Yeah, this
Yeah.
is this is fun. This is fun
Yeah.
because also witnessing one another is like this a part of that process, maybe like, oh, like I'm witnessing
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. My sense is that, and that's part of the impulse of why we're sharing, is because when we have enough space to take each other in, means that my being, with all my limbs of my sight and my heart and my mind and all these limbs, you are existing
Mm.
inside of me at a
Mm-hmm.
certain depth.
Yeah.
And that there's something about that, the interaction between the data and the you that is coming in, and where that is meeting inside me, like the sense of like what there's some alchemy that is happening there,
Yeah.
of like space holding.
Mm.
Yeah. And and that when there's space and warmth and availability, then yeah, our relationship,
Mm-hmm.
this is so beautiful, man. Relationship is what is like the fabric of everything. Like the essential fabric is actually relationship, not separateness.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's yeah, it's bringing relationality to the fore, um, which is what we need, I think. In a way, I think that's, I mean, that's what I want. It's,
That's what we want. That's the calling that we feel.
that's the calling, and it's also the calling of our hearts when we are separate and alienated from ourselves or from each other. That's the same law. I mean, it's like you shared about that teaching of the longing itself being the relationship with the divinity.
Mm,
And I think maybe it comes from the Sufi tradition, or I'm not sure, but
yeah.
there's something there akin to this, because I'm just seeing how, oh yeah, in those moments of experience of separation, it's actually that's the fabric of the relationship that's also being experienced and presented. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of something I was thinking about, because I'm fascinated by like ways in which we can talk about the mind and what it is that our mental faculties are. And
Mhm, mhm,
it can get a little confusing sometimes, as far as like just the language and what exactly is the mind, and talking about the ego, but also talking about the unconscious and talking about other parts. But what I was thinking about more recently was just that it feels like this kind of human consciousness, and it's not only human, because I think it's in other beings as well, but the kind of self-reflexive ability to like, oh, I reflect upon myself. I know, I think about myself thinking, which feels like characteristic to this stage of whatever experience that we're going through, um is is maybe that opportunity for love to grow into that. I don't know if that makes sense. Like it's like conscious, it's like this kind of consciousness that we're developing. It allows for the distinction. I'm going to separate, I'm going to see the parts, and I'm going to see the multiplicity. And the mind has this ability of making many out of one and one out of many in a strange way. and and somehow I feel like it's tied to the way in which love itself, or God, is at this at this stage of um at this phase of existence, right? And so it feels tied to that, like looking back, and this idea of us being the universe awakening, and
mhm,
seeing ourselves. But there's something characteristic about, yeah, our mental faculties, and being able to do that and being able to realize that in a way that is love. And so it feels distinct from the ground of experience that we were describing when we were talking about that immediacy of the horses, or of another animals, where it's like their experience is just being directly reflected upon the screen of their being. And yet somehow we're adding this modality, this mode, where we can use our imagination in a way. And I guess it feels like it, and I'm saying imagination in the sense of like this mental capacity. um and it reminds me also a little bit about play, because although certainly play is not a human thing, play feels universal. Well, I don't know if universal, but certainly present in so many different beings, different kinds of beings. It also has this implicitness of like self-consciousness in the playfulness. So of being aware that there's this state in which I'm playing, and there's this edge of like I'm going to role play also and participate in this. So yeah, I just went into all of that, but yeah, it feels stimulating.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can feel the piece that you named, that of how there's a moment in which it becomes clear that that ground of awareness, or that basic presence and inclusionary state, when there's enough space, etc., that is love. And why also we might call that, why we might call it God, and why we might call it love. And that there's something here that is like, what is it that seems to essentially respect life the most?
Yeah.
Like respect existence for what it is, in a way that includes existence, the most of existence that we can. And that path, it's like a direction. I am pointing to, or looking towards, a place where we exist together.
Yeah. The most inclusionary state.
Yeah, that we know of, and that connects to what you said about the longing, and that Sufi
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
interpretation of longing, that because longing has that quality of like a call for connection. And that there's
Yes.
something there that also is connected to the nature of grief and grieving. That there's something that happens at the depths of loss if we let ourselves be broken. If we actually let it happen. If we don't, then it becomes very depressing and stagnant and muting of life.
Yeah.
But if we allow, and we have enough connection to allow ourselves to be broken by the experience, then the cry that comes out from that tear or from that crack
Mhm. Mhm.
is part of that unitive, not unitive in a go away difference way, but
Yeah. Yeah.
unitive with difference
Mhm.
way.
Yeah, that's so true. It's so true, and it's interesting that it's easy to lose sight of the fact that our longing of what our longing is calling for in a way, because
Mhm.
it the experience of longing can be one in which we focus on separation. We focus on the fact that there is this longing for something that I don't have, instead of the seeing that there's an implication in the longing itself that we are part of something. Right, there's
Yeah.
this true sense
Even
there.
even what you're just saying right there, because as I'm hearing you say, looking towards the like the scarcity or the separation,
Mm-hmm.
my sense is that this is like this neighborhood that we're touching right now is part of where there is a cultural um, drought
Yeah.
that is so like very, very common cross culturally, not everywhere, but in many, many cultures. Um, that that act of looking towards the separation,
Yeah.
even in myself, just as I listen to myself saying, "Oh, I'm looking towards separation," there is an implicitness that I feel when I hear that, and I imagine myself doing that. There's an implicitness
Mhm.
as if I were failing somehow.
Yeah.
And when in reality, in this remembering together essence, the moment that I look towards separation, I'm not just pointing myself towards something. I'm feeling
Mm-hmm.
like literally
Yeah.
it's reverberating through my being. And if our culture can be one that we can see each other when we're, quote, looking towards separation
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to like connect to
Mm-hmm.
each other,
Yeah.
in that way.
Yeah.
And so that's as we bring back the sense of family, and the way
Yeah.
that you and I, like what it is that we're hoping to do here is that in fact some of the most precious places and most important places that we want to bring to the fore here are the places where we're looking towards separation.
Yeah.
And that's what also that the culture that you and I as brothers have created for in our relationship. We've done that for each other, which has created a
Mm-hmm.
great resilience to our relationship and also beauty.
Mm. And the
Great, great beauty.
closeness.
And a closeness.
And the
And a close and
closeness,
a closeness.
which
You,
is
Marco, that always remind us of the closeness.
distinct. Well, which is somehow sometimes unfortunately different than what people expect from siblings. Not necessarily, obviously there's beautiful, but anyways. And but there's yes, Adriano, gracias. There's something about what
Yeah.
you said there about being with one another and being willing to be with one another as we also acknowledge that we're looking towards separation and that we're orienting our beings towards separation. And that's, yeah, we got to do more of that. It reminded me of walking into a, it's happened to me in several places, but sacred spaces and even, churches or temples of different sorts. And I might have not known it at the time, but part of why, um, anyway, going in there and looking at people who were praying and seeing that that there was something that they were doing, that they were joining themselves with some experience through that space, and that there was this communal aspect of here we are doing it together, and that there is this it's this recognition that that's a part of human experience, right? Of like, oh, I'm gonna go look for something. I'm gonna go look for unity. I'm gonna go look for and that there would be a designated space to do that in community feels important. And I feel like there's something that rang very true with the way that you described being with one another as we acknowledge that we are oriented towards separation, because there's great resilience and resource in that, not necessarily even coming up with propositions and words that are solutions to that quote separation or experience of separation, but it's rather that beingness. And somehow it's, yeah, that feels really really important. And yeah, anyway, I'm excited because I see myself as also becoming more open to bring my own looking to separation to the foreground with each other, but also simply with reality, and with the broader world in a way, but just
Yeah.
because it's true that there have been experiences throughout my life at which I determined that you know I wanted to stay separate, or that I saw separation as either a fact or as something I should prefer to be separate from, as a defense, or what have you. So yeah. Anyway, there's moments that are coming up for me in memories and things that I held on, like moments of intensity of experience where I held on to the vision of separation. And I think we all have them, and in a way it feels natural, and it feels loving for us to open up a space where we have that opportunity, and also where we kind of create an opening for anyone who feels called to or wishes to also share in that reconciliation in a way. So feeling grateful for that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
grateful again to be doing it in family, and to be doing it because there's something about remembering that can be very difficult, and yet somehow that remembering can also become a treasure. um, and family feels central to that. So
Yeah.
thank you, Adrián,
Yeah, of course, hermano. Of
corazón.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can feel the spirit of this. It's like a vein of medicine, like a vein of medicine that we're acknowledging, and also the part that is very alive for me is that as we create a field together, like that we really include each other, then we become a cauldron
Mm-hmm.
inside which we can help bring places where of others' experiences,
Mm-hmm.
and not just individuals, but also then groups,
Mm-hmm.
and then countries, collective experiences that we can essentially simply in this very, it's because it's the same thing, it's exactly the same thing. Do we have enough awareness and presence and actual embodied presence to be able to include um, the different looking aways,
Mm-hmm.
the different looking aways, and that And this process that you and I have, well, life has reminded us
Mm.
enough to realize that we need to acknowledge where we are touched, where we, our own places. And that as we do that, and that we do that with each other, we become more open. And that field, we felt that field, we feel that field. I mean, that's part of what is right here,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
That's actually what's right here.
Mm.
Yeah. And
Mm.
this, because now going back to what you said, that there's an implicit need to question the separateness.
Mm.
And part of what's there is to even question, oh, are we separate from the pain that is happening in that other part of the world? And here, this culture that you and I and that we have been taught and that we're flowing in and swimming in includes all the places where essentially we can't feel,
Mm.
and we're not including
Yeah.
as a living process
Mm.
that is happening right now,
Yeah.
and that we're committing to naturally a culture
Mm.
of inclusion,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
by doing it with each other and then with others, and
Yeah.
then more together and together and together.
Thank you. It feels so important to say that because I think frequently one of the things that happens for us is that as we're on the path towards reconciliation with ourselves, even with our own psyche, with our own wounds, with our own family or whatever, um, a lot of times we come to this fork in the road where we think that we have to either choose ourselves, choose to care for ourselves, or choose to care for others. And it's such a painful experience. And so many of us are exposed to the horror and the violence that exists and that people live every day. It's happening right now. And they're not able to reconcile that with the choice of caring for oneself in a sense, or reconcile that with the choice of centering one's own experience, as if there were some contradiction there.
Exactly.
um
Exactly. And those words right there, as if there was some contradiction, is like a little neighborhood of space,
yeah.
like right there.
Yes.
In that sense of the contradiction, or the contradiction. And that right there is the individual um, relationship. Like what that feels like for each of us is the individual contact with what's between us and the rest of life.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And it feels very central, or part of this, what I was trying to point to earlier, which is this mental faculty.
Mm.
Because I think in a way, the part of us that seeks to avoid contradictions is the part of us that has fallen under a certain kind of mental illusion, a certain kind of rationale, you know, as if,
Yeah, it's a fabricated.
yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
somehow as if contradictions were, um,
Resolutionary.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you. um, so,
Which
well,
they are, just very temporarily, which is what it feels like. I'm just gonna shelf this right now. Feels good.
yeah,
And there's something
That's
there
totally, totally what
that there's energy there. And that's, in some ways, that's actually brings us to the topic of that we can get into at another moment more in depth of what happens to a civilization that has difficulty saying no.
Totally. Yes. Also a civilization that is unwilling to hold contradiction.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Which is like, oh, I have difficulty saying yes and no and the in between, and it's like all of this, and that's the history of evolution. I mean, literally, the distance that we feel and the limitations that we feel and the places where that it's like I feel a limitation in my size, and therefore when I say no, it's shaped by my limitations, and I'm like no in a certain way, and
Mm-hmm.
or I say
Mm-hmm.
yes in a certain way that might be,
Yeah. Yeah.
manipulative or very loving.
Well, that's
Yeah.
fertile ground for us to
Yeah.
have another conversation about just what is the experience of saying no, or have feeling like you can or cannot say no, or having to say no, and all the different experiential adventures, if not pitfalls, uh
Mhm.
that brings along.
Mm.
Yes, brother. Well,
Wonderful. Well, may we also um, just a moment of acknowledgement, just that you and I right now just opened like a door to be seen and felt by anybody who's seeing and feeling this now, and that
yes.
we're following this impulse of the generosity that we find or that we sense as implicit in existence as a as health.
The openness, the spaciousness.
The openness, the
Yes.
spaciousness, and that
Yeah.
we're following that, and all of our resonance, our aliveness, and our commitment to each other here right now. This is part of the adventure that we are bringing out into the world in this particular way,
Mm-hmm.
and the
Mm-hmm.
why. The sense of the why is
Mm-hmm.
because we are, well, we're playing with what we sense, in a positive way. We're playing with what we
Yes.
sense is
Yes, brother.
medicine of existence.
Thank you for bringing that, and thank you also for remembering the fact that this is open to an audience and to the public. And I feel also
Yeah.
just grateful to have that opportunity, even, and to think that we can share, and that we can be in each other's lives, whether it's you and I, or anyone across the world. So thank you, Adriano.
Mhm.
And yeah,
Of
it's
course.
beautiful. So
And so it's also
we'll
just
close.
implicit in what you said is that we're inviting relation.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that's, yeah. And so um, amazing, hermano. That's
Great.
Thank
Bueno,
you.
pues we'll
Yeah,
we'll close and sending love.
sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah. Thank you to you too, and to anybody and everybody who may also be in touch. And
Mm-hmm.
till next time. Till next time.